Welcome to Creativity, the podcast where art and engineering collide. My name is Jeremy S. Cook, and this is my co-host, Max Maker.
Our guest this week knows his way around retro gaming, turning 80s kids' toys into new rum-buzz video games. And he runs his own development business with his wife. His name is Matt Brailsford from the UK.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good yourself.
Yeah, pretty good.
So first of all, what have you been working on this week? What are you up to?
Well, work or personal?
Both.
Well, either one, whichever is more interesting.
Can you differentiate?
Yeah. So my day job is as a developer. As you said in the intro, I run a development company with my wife. We build websites for other companies. It pays the bills. It pays for me to do the things I enjoy in my spare time. So I guess in my spare time at the moment, I'm just playing around with some more kind of retro gaming stuff. So I found online something called Free Play Zero, where they've converted little Game Boy Advanced into to be able to shoehorn a little Raspberry Pi Zero in there. I'm currently buying the bits together to build one of those, which looks pretty cool.
Okay, is that Game Boy DS is the one that you flip open?
No, I think it's older than that one. It's the GBA.
Oh, the purple one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like the shape of those. There's something aesthetically pleasing about them.
Yeah, the SP looked pretty boring, to be honest. It's just a grey box.
Yeah, a box that flips open. Could be like a makeup box.
Yeah. I remember that was the last one I bought, and I was amazed by. I had this game. It was Lord of the Rings, and they had a little tiny video sequence.
Right.
It was just maybe 2 or 3 seconds long, and I was so amazed. I was like, "Wow, I can watch videos on this thing."
Do you remember the Game Gear, which is the Sega one? And I think they made that used to take cartridges in the back as well, and they had a cartridge which was a TV antenna, so you could turn your gaming device into a TV.
Yeah, I think my buddy had that.
Yeah, pretty cool.
But he had it for the Game Boy.
Yeah.
He had it for the Game Boy. Are you sure about that? A TV cartridge?
I think they did a camera one.
Sure.
They did a camera module for the Game Boy.
Oh, that's right.
I don't know if they did a TV one.
I'm pretty sure he had one, and he kind of broke his antenna, and then he connected just a bare wire from the antenna to the socket of his house antenna, and he said that works. I still don't know if that could have worked or not if he was just me.
I think he might have been showing off.
I remember I had a Game Gear growing up, and I think it took 6 AA batteries, and it was like, I never had the money to have the batteries for it, and it's like I could buy the DC adapter for $15, but there was never quite. I was like, well, I can get a couple more hours with 6 more batteries for like $3, or I can spend $15, and it was like I hadn't quite figured out the economy of like
you wanted instant
you buy the big
instant gratification.
Exactly. I couldn't wait that month to save up for the DC adapter. I had to have my fix right then. Now, what about yourself, Max? What have you been working on this week?
I've been working a lot outdoors because we have really nice weather. It's sunny every day it has been for a month, which is very unusual for North of Germany. So I've been working on the driveway for almost every day for a month now. And I've been building lots of customer work because I ran out of parts. I built these drawer slides for caravans, and somehow I forgot to order new parts, so now I had to make some from scratch, which is very time intensive. And after I was done with that, I started taking all the scrap parts I had and building shop furniture for my new workshop. So I made a bandsaw stand out of aluminium profiles, made a video about that, and then I made a little shelf to put all my tools in to hang up on the wall. So every tool has its little slot just for that tool, so I can pull out the tool without pulling out anything else. And then today I built a miter saw station with folding wings, so I can fold it down and fold it back up, so I can put down a whole length of aluminium, and it's nicely supported. So, yeah, that's been my month.
Sounds like you've been really busy.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh yeah, every day for a month.
I saw that you built it out of aluminum extrusion, correct?
Yeah.
So is it? Shall I assume it's a Bosch extrusion?
Well, that's the thing. I think Item is the company that invented this a few years ago, but the patent ran out a few years ago. So maybe 5 years ago, the patent ran out, and now anybody can make it. And my stuff I'm pretty sure it's from China because it's so cheap, but it works just as well as the Bosch or the Item stuff.
Okay. Yeah, here we use 80/20 is what most people use, but like you said, the
I-
patents run out, so now anybody
Is
can.
that 80 times 20 millimeters?
They just call it 80 divided by 20, 80/20, and I think it's a reference to Pareto's principle. 80% of your, what is it, 20% of your effort gives you 80% of the results. I don't know. It's just
Are you joking or is it true?
no, I'm not joking. I'm not joking about any of it.
Wow.
And a lot of
'Cause-
industrial machinery is like the guarding is used. They use the 80/20. It's like, oh, give me some 80/20 guarding, and that's people know what that is over here. Which
Wow.
now that I'm explaining it to a non-American, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's
Yeah,
very
because
popular here.
somebody asked me today, did you use 80/20 for that? And I said like, no, it's 20/40 because it's 20 millimeters by 40 millimeters.
Okay, yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably what they meant. So there you go. And it's interestingly enough, they have metric sizes and American sizes. So I guess it could be 80/20, 25/25. I guess
But it's 80/20. It makes sense because the tiny things take most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You think about it. I think we were talking about it another week. Just some of your projects, you put all this effort into it, and it's like, wow, nobody cares about this. But then that 20% of you do one thing and just kind of takes off. I'm sure. I'm sure you've seen results like that, Matt, as far as your business, right? I'm sure
Yeah,
some things are.
yeah. It's always the same. You can get so much done really quickly, and it's always the last details that just eat up all the time. Same with the making. It's just you can get quite a lot in quite a short period of time, but then that final finessing is what just that takes you 80% of just getting it perfect.
Oh,
So
I know
you
what you
you you
mean.
build a lot of tiny arcade machines.
Yeah.
So when you build them, what takes up the? First of all, can you describe to the viewers what exactly you're building? So to the listeners,
Um,
because they can't see us, and
yeah.
and then what takes up most of the time when you're building them?
So I think I've built like four little arcade machines at the moment. So I tend to be inspired a lot by kind of retro 80s type toys and things from that era. So I think the first one that I made, I call them Rhombus because it runs ROM, so it's an emulator, and it just sounded quite retro because my first one was called Rhombus 3000, and it's like everything in the 80s was something 2000, so I thought 3000 was obviously better, right? By a factor of 1,000.
It always seems silly. It's like early '80s. It's like whatever 2000, because the year 2000 was so far in the future. But
Yeah,
then it gets to be 2000. You're like, this is actually pretty silly now. You can't have a
yeah.
you know year 2000 space program when it's 2015.
No. So yeah, so it was just that fun. Everybody seemed to do that in the 80s. It was like so far in the future, it must be futuristic every time anything was named 2000. But yeah, so my first one was I took an old grandstand scramble. It was a little desktop toy from the 80s that was like a little video game. Um, and basically just ripped out all the insides and swapped that out and put a Raspberry Pi in there and converted it to run RetroPie, which runs various different emulators. So yeah, I converted that, made a little arcade, and then the next one I did, I was inspired more from cocktail cabinets. So this, I decided to continue the rhombus theme throughout all of these. So this ended up being Rhombus CT for Rhombus Cocktail. And this one was designed. I designed this one all myself in terms of making the whole cabinet myself. Designed it and laser cut it and kind of painted it and stuck it all together. And again, it was trying to be a little desktop sized two-player arcade machine, and that one came out pretty well. Um,
Oh yeah, that was a beautiful. That was
yeah, I
beautiful.
really that's probably out of all. Well, I don't know. I was going to say that's my favorite, but my new one's quite cool as well. But the one in between, so the one that came after that, which went quite crazy on Twitter, was I'm not sure if you had these in America. It was the Tomy Turbo dashboard. It was a little red kid's toy again from the 80s, and it was a little steering wheel with a gear shifter, and then there was a little screen with a car that used to be like move from side to side. It was all mechanical. Um,
I I don't remember that particular one here. I remember I
no,
had this motorbike racing game that you just
yeah,
wound it up, and then they had like little bikes that came and you had to like dodge them with a mechanical
yeah,
thing.
pretty similar. So it didn't. It was just a rolling road. Like you never actually got anywhere. It was just like you could tell it was just a drum inside that's got the print of a road on there. So it was pretty
I,
cool. It
I
was
think that just consider how many hours I spent playing that game. It's just and then you were like, oh well, this game that's 1,000 times better than this. You put it down after two hours or
yeah,
something.
but it's so cool. Like with that especially, I think there was just so many people that had that toy as a kid, so it was just so like ingrained. Like it just was. I think most people were just reminiscing of being a childhood when they had that. But the conversion that I did was to basically revamp that. So what I like to do is kind of try and reimagine 80s stuff, as in, but what would it be today if the engineers then had all of the things we have available to us, like readily off the shelf? So this conversion, I converted it again, putting a Raspberry Pi in there, but a little screen where the car used to be, and this time it ran Outrun. A port of the classic Outrun that runs on a Raspberry Pi. But it was pretty cool because I managed to, because this was a port and wasn't actually running an emulator, I was able to kind of dig into the code, and I was then able to use that to drive a physical kind of dashboard display. So had rev counter and like fuel gauge and speedometer,
That
all.
one looks really, really cool.
Yeah, it was. It was a really fun build to do. And like I say, half the people that really loved it were people that had that toy as a child, and then the other half were retro gamers, which just loved Outrun, and that those two together just made that crazy popular. But it was really fun, and it was fun to try and integrate kind of hardware into software. So everybody knows the classic Outrun game, but all the little dials and things that used to be on screen, I pulled those out and made them physical displays. And it's really cool just watching people's reactions when they realize that I'm driving it, and it's like that's one thing that I'm driving, and that's influencing Outrun. But then when they see all the dashboard display kind of light up in real time to the game, they just go insane. It's just like crazy. And I think the last thing that I did as well was put a little vibrating motor into the steering wheel, so you get haptic feedback when you're like driving on the rough or when you crash.
Oh, that's great.
Oh
So
wow. How did you get that from the software?
Um, so the port was it's something called Cannonball, which is a C++ port of Outrun. And so because it's a port, it was the whole code there, and because it's running on the Raspberry Pi directly, obviously there are libraries and things for C++ that run on the Raspberry Pi that let you talk directly to the GPIO pins and control things that are connected to that. So it was really just picking through the source code of the game and finding the point where certain things happened and then
Okay.
passing that
So
detail off to the hardware.
so the code is something like if on the rough, make it rumble.
Yeah, essentially. So the
Oh
game the
wow. So
game
you actually had
knows.
to go into the code
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
game.
yeah.
Wow.
So it was all a bit hacky, but it didn't really matter. It was just getting the final effect, and it worked really well. I
And
liked
the
it.
finish looks really nice on the machine itself.
Yeah, yeah. Again,
Do you,
that's another thing that I like to try and do, which is I have certain rules that I like to try and give myself because I think rules kind of they are quite good in terms of forcing you to work within limits. I find that a good thing having specific limits. So one of them is one that I try to give myself is that it should always look as off the shelf as possible. That somebody should be able
yeah.
to look at that and not realize that it's been hacked. Because I think there's a tendency in making, which is all cool. This is where I started, which is wires and things poking out everywhere, and you can tell that it's been modified. Whereas I like that surprise element where people see it and they think they know what it is, but then they don't. So that trying to get that off-the-shelf look is one of the things that I really like to try and do.
Yeah, that's the thing I don't like that much about my Fab Lab. I've got a local they call it Fab Lab. It's a
Yeah,
makerspace, and the tool they use the most is a laser cutter, and the cheapest material they can get is really thin MDF.
Yeah.
So anything they build, you can tell, oh, it's made on a laser cutter.
Yeah.
And it's always square corners. It's never anything round, anything beautiful. And I just think, oh, come on, just put a little bit more effort into this.
Yeah. I mean, my cocktail table was fully laser cut. I think you can still. I do agree with. I think there's quite a lot of things out there that are just raw laser cut laser ply, and you can tell those and see those like a mile off, and it's just the standard kind of maker look. But it's that thing of, can you take that an extra step further and kind of try and make it look as professional as possible? And that's what I like to try and do.
Yeah, well, you've certainly been able to pull that off. So I guess your last build, you actually called this it's a rhombus pinball table, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So this was a laser cut one.
This really looks like a pinball.
Yeah. Thankfully, pinball.
I'm looking at a picture now, and it really looks like a tiny pinball table.
It is. Thankfully, though, being laser cut, it's all square anyway, so that works perfectly. This was probably the first. This uses a Latte Panda, which is similar to a Raspberry Pi, but it runs Windows. So that was the first time that I used that. It was a requirement ultimately because there were no pinball emulators that I could find that ran on a Raspberry Pi. But in some way, that was kind of a blessing in disguise as well, because the Latte Panda supports dual monitors out of the box, so it really allowed me to do that kind of game field and the back glass screens, which I think again, they're the things that people are just like, oh, cool, he's got a pinball, you can play pinball on it, and then they realize that the back glass is live as well. So
the back glass, you've got an actual little monitor in there.
Yeah.
And the playing field as well is also a monitor.
Yeah. So.
And where did you source them? How does that work? I can attach an LCD display to an Arduino, but that's really simple. But you're saying you've got Windows on here?
Yeah. So I think sometimes there's a bit of luck involved as well. So the Latte Panda, they have an official 7-inch little widescreen monitor that you can connect, and that's the one that I use for the playing field. So that probably was the starting point of the entire pinball machine. Like you take the measurements of what is available and you say, right, well, I'm going to base it around this. So for me, the starting point was that monitor, knowing that that's probably what I'm going to use for that screen. Thankfully, that being 7-inch, the back glass was a 5-inch display, and they're really kind of easy to get hold of. But thankfully, they're kind of in scale, so there was a bit of luck there that one doesn't look hugely kind of out of scale or proportion to the other one. But yeah, the little 7-inch screen was the off-the-shelf standard monitor for the Latte Panda, and then I just based the rest of the design around that.
So when you boot this up, do you get the Windows to startup sound and all of this?
Yeah. So it has to boot into Windows first, and then there's kind of like an application that boots on startup that launches the user interface. So similar to if you've ever used RetroPie, that you can choose your emulator and choose your game, then there's a couple that are available for pinball machines as well. So this was Pinball X, and it allows you to flick through the different pinball games that you've got in, and so you can choose which game you want to play.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So you could play Minesweeper on there, in theory.
Yeah, you'd have to do it from the side, because looking at the side, but in theory you could, yeah.
Now, I know you tried to sell some of your inventions years back. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did.
But yeah, I guess you found that to be challenging.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was the right product. I guess the main thing that I sold was something called a Petduino, and this was a little Arduino pet is what it was meant to be. But it was just meant to be like a little cute thing that had a couple of buttons, a screen. Well, I say a screen, it was an 8x8 dot matrix. And then just a few other kind of sensors and things, because I think when I started playing around, I only came to hardware like in my late, well, probably 20s, and it might have been late 20s. So I'd kind of played around with things historically in the past, like just taking things apart. I think everybody probably did.
Hmm.
But making and learning about Arduinos and things wasn't until later on in life. But it's that I think I hear it from a lot of people, which is they all buy Arduinos or they all buy Raspberry Pis, and it's like, now what do I do? So my Petduino thing was just meant to be, well, if you want to get into Arduino, because this had an Arduino based in there, then you can build this thing and you've got a few things that you can do out of the box, because I think that's what people were lacking. But yeah, I did. So I built this kit, I've sold it online, sold quite a few of them, but I think this was also in a time of kind of Kickstarter era as well, and there was
Hmm.
just so many Kickstarters of people building like with things to learn coding, and you're like, oh, this is just like a crazy market kind of to be in. So I was just a small guy, just like putting like these. They were pretty cool kits, and I did get some good responses from people that built them. But it was just it's just a crazy market to try and get into at that kind of level. There's so many different people that are building things to help teach coding, which is good, but it's competitive, so it wasn't an easy market for sure.
Hey, I thought it was a pretty cool product myself. So
Yeah,
we weren't trying to say it wasn't. Just wondered your experience. So,
yeah, I think it was probably it's not necessarily a bad product. It was a good product, but it would take a lot of effort, I think, to make it really popular. It would probably be okay as like just to make a bit of spare cash on the side.
Hmm.
But
sure.
it was also like how much it didn't feel the right product to me. I almost felt like I made it because of how I felt when I started, but it probably wasn't true to the style of making that I like to build. So like all my retro stuff is probably more akin to what I like to build. So it was a reaction of this would be pretty cool for other people, but I think it was more a case of I'm probably not the right person to do that because that's not where my passion was. So it wasn't a bad
Right.
product. It probably just wasn't the right fit with me.
Your business is programming. That's your main business. So every hour you
Yeah.
spend working on the other thing that may make you some money, but maybe not as much, it's got to be eaten to you. It's just costing me money every hour. Maybe I make $5 an hour
Yeah.
making
It's
this
like this
device.
podcast.
Yeah, like this. I mean, I think we make what negative money per hour probably for the
Negative
podcast.
money, and you still owe me for the Zencaster and the SoundCloud premium accounts.
Oh right. So yeah, I gotta pay up. So
But you do these for the love of it. You like this,
Oh yeah,
like
it's fun.
doing this creative.
I can't talk about these things with my girlfriend, can I? She's listening to this. Yeah. So, Matt, what we always ask our guests, what is your favorite tool?
Oh, see, you've said you don't like laser cutting, but laser cutter's my favorite tool. I don't,
oh,
I
I don't
think
know how
I
you
think
could
you.
not like
I
them. They
like
look
laser
awesome.
cutters
Yeah,
if you use them,
yeah,
sensibly.
yeah. I just love it because it's just so rapid. I've got one in the garage, which is like I know that's quite privileged to have, but it's just so useful. Like you can be sat on the couch thinking something up, spend 20 minutes, draw it out in kind of Inkscape, and then head to the garage and have it cut in 2 minutes, and then built whatever you've designed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a 3D printer in there as well, but I just find those take hours to do pretty much anything, and I'm really bad at getting quality finishes from 3D printers. Um,
Really, my one just worked out of the box. I never had to adjust anything ever.
Yeah, I just,
I guess I was lucky.
I don't know.
I really
I just,
like mine too, but it just takes forever. So that's my
yeah,
problem with it.
yeah,
Yeah. I found that if I put it somewhere in a room that I don't have to open for 24 hours, I don't mind it running. But if it runs in my room or somewhere where I walk by all the time, it makes me nervous because I think, oh, this could fail at any second, and then I've wasted 12 hours already.
yeah,
It doesn't really make sense because whether it stops or not, it's not my physical work I put in there. It's just time invested.
yeah. Well,
Sure.
But it's not my time that I invested. It's the time the machine invested into it. So
it's the time you invested your hope that it would come out well.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just really, I don't know why I'm so bad at it, but the same reason you don't like laser cutters, well, not that you don't like laser cutters, but certain makes, I'm painting a bad picture of you with laser cutters, aren't I?
I guess what I don't like about them is the material thickness, because 5 millimeters probably works quite well for your scale of things that you build,
Yeah,
anything handheld. But when I build anything that's a little bit bigger, anything like a furniture piece,
yeah.
I can't use a laser cutter. It's
No,
just too thin.
no.
You
But
just need to buy
yeah,
a water jet machine.
oh,
That's
that would be
Oh yeah,
nice.
that's cheap, I heard.
Yeah.
no, they're not.
Oh, what is the? Oh, have you seen the Shaper, the
Yeah.
router
Oh yeah,
that's got a little kind of mini CNC machine in there? I so want one of those, but they won't.
Yeah.
They're not available outside of the US yet.
I actually got to use one last year. I went to the Maker Faire in New York, and they were
Oh
there, and
yeah,
yeah, they. I was shocked at how good they were. I think I was talking about this the other week, and it just
Mm-hmm.
they correct. You say, okay, I'm going to go from this point to this point, and they kind of can correct for you. And I didn't think it would work well, but it did. And I guess they wouldn't show up to a show if it didn't. So
yeah.
yeah,
That
really.
would be an ideal tool that I would like. Until then, my laser cutter is my favorite.
Well, you have a CNC router as well, right? You don't use that quite
I
as much.
do, yeah. I've not really used it too much.
What brand is it?
Oh, I don't know. I bought it off a friend, so he was
Oh, okay. Okay.
he'd used it quite a lot, so I knew it worked and it did what CNCs are meant to do. But I don't fully know. I think I did put is it the Xcarve
Mm-hmm.
controller onto it? So I think he was using some Raspberry Pi based like home built controller. And I have a rule which is if you wanna use it, buy it. If you wanna figure it out, then you can build it. But yeah, so for this I just bought the Xcarve controller, and that it worked really well. But I haven't.
Oh,
Yeah, I
that's
don't know
great.
why. I just haven't really got into CNC. Something hasn't clicked with me yet on that one.
Oh, there's a lot to learn with
Yeah,
CNC. It's not as easy as a 3D printer
no, or laser cutting.
or laser cutting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a. Well, I guess we both have one. I guess all of us here have CNC routers, but
Oh
it
yeah.
does take. It's weird because it's like you just strap a piece of wood onto it, any wood you want, let
Yeah,
it go. But it's for some reason it's just so much more complicated than using a 3D printer. I guess because the material is so consistent with a 3D printer, and with a laser cutter, you're not really. Well, I don't know. That's easier too, I guess. I don't have one, so
I
I'm
would
a little
like if I
jealous there.
wouldn't have to connect my laptop to it every time. Like just have a standalone thing where I just put in the SD card
yeah,
and run it from there. That would be really nice.
yeah.
So maybe somebody that knows about electronics could develop such a board.
Sure, then they could sponsor our podcast, so that'd be.
Oh yeah.
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 Now, I've read. I guess you're quite good at a program called Umbraco. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, I don't think there's any
Okay.
particular way to pronounce it, but that's as good as any.
Okay. Now, I have no idea what that is. What can you elaborate that? I mean, that's what your business is based on,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what
So,
is this?
so this is a CMS, so it's a content management system, and it's just a kind of platform on which to build websites. So I guess if many people will be familiar with something like WordPress. That's a CMS. So it allows you to build websites where customers can manage their own content ultimately. Historically, people have built websites, and if the customer wanted to change anything, they would have to go back to the people that built it and ask them to change it for them. So all Umbraco does and other CMSs do is allow people to kind of change that content themselves. And then Umbraco is just one that kind of clicks with me and one that I've been around for quite a few years now.
And it paid for your garage too, I guess.
Yes, it does.
Well, that's great.
Hey guys, I just bought a lathe on eBay.
Wow.
You did. How many
Just got
pounds is
a
it?
just got a message.
So how many?
It's
How heavy is it?
I just know the price. It's 750 euros. Oh, it's a jeweler's lathe. It's not that big, but it's not very old. It's at most 10 years old.
Nice.
Oh, that's
Oh
great. Well,
wow!
congratulations.
Yeah,
So,
I don't have
thank
one
you
of
very
those
much.
yet. I don't have one of those in my
Yeah,
garage yet.
and it looks like I can pick this up by hand. So it's not a really big one. That's really cool.
Sweet.
That's great. Yeah, we've
Just
talked
got the
about this
email.
before. It's like, it's like the milling machine. It's like the yin and the yang. You got to have milling machine, you got to have lathe, and then, well, and
Oh
then you
yeah.
have to have everything else, 3D printer,
Yeah.
laser cutter, whatever else. So,
Wow, that's really cool.
There's always one more tool that you need.
Oh yeah. Now I need to pick it up.
I,
I need to drive there.
Yeah.
I had a lathe that weighed 800 pounds back in the day, and when I got it back to my house, on the back of my truck, I had to have somebody. I hired a tow truck to come pick it up and put it in my garage. It was He didn't seem to think it was that weird of a thing to do, but I somebody suggested that, and I guess they tow cars and they tow lathes, so that's what they do.
Quite specialist.
Sometimes I'm amazed by the questions that the people don't ask. When I've got some weird situation where I have to deal with different people, and then I always think, oh, what are you going to say when they ask you this question? And they don't ask the question at all. They don't even find it curious. Like that guy that told your lathe, you know?
He acted like he'd done something like that before, and to be honest, when I got the lathe, the person it's like, well, you could just hire a wrecker and they'll do it. I'm like, really? They can do that? And yeah, well, they've got a crane in the back of their thing. So I was like, okay, why not? So
Oh yeah, that's true.
they can pull my car out of the lake, or they can pull my lathe into my garage. Either one.
So Matt, what are you working on right now that's going to be released soon?
Well, I don't know about working on right now. Well, I am, but it's probably a long running project, this one. So a follow on from some of my other kind of arcade builds. So this one's going to be another mod of an old 80s toy. And this one's based around something called the Top Shot Pilot. This
Mm-hmm.
was again another 80s desktop mechanical toy, but you used to have a joystick, and there was a little screen, and inside there was a physical little plastic jet on the ground that spins around when you kind of move the joystick. And the game, it was a similar kind of 80s game, rolling fields that you have a physical element that kind of moves around and shoot things or avoids things. But this was pretty cool because the game used to project down on top of like the playing field where the jet was. So I've been trying to figure out how I can convert this again into something a bit more modern. So the if I wanted to do it really quick and really easy, I would probably just rip everything out, put a screen behind it, and kind of turn it into like an afterburner arcade game. But something about that just kind of feels wrong to me. Like there's a lot of engineering that went into the original that it almost feels like disrespectful to the people that built the thing in the first place, that they put that much effort into it, and all I do is kind of put a screen behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So something I've been trying to figure out is, can I keep that kind of physical jet element inside? So when you look inside, there's this plastic jet that spins around when you move the joystick. So originally I was looking at different projection techniques to see if I could mimic what was there originally, but maybe digitize the projection. Those weren't working out too well. But what I have realized is that with modern LCD screens, they're not actually affected by magnets like kind of old screens used to be. So my theory and plan at the moment is to see if I can kind of lay an LCD screen down inside the console and place the jet on top in the middle with a magnet behind it and control and spin it on top of the LCD screen. And if I can do that, then I'm also looking to see if I can build like a custom game then that is displayed on the screen, and the jet ultimately stays in position where it is in the middle, but the playing field would move around, so it's kind of like it's flying around and
Ah, that's really
doing
cool.
things. So there's a few tricky elements there in terms of figuring out the jet and the magnet based control, and then coding up a custom game for it. But yeah, that's one that's on the like on the list of things to be building, but it's going to take a little time.
So instead of moving a joystick to control the jet is controlled manually by hand itself.
Well, the jet is controlled by the joystick. So when you lean it to the left or lean it to the right, the jet physically spins. So this is what it does at the moment. So it's got some kind of lever system underneath inside that controls that jet and causes it to move around. So I want to really keep that kind of aesthetic that when you move the joystick, the jet inside the viewing area that spins around. So I want to try and keep that. So I'm going to see if I can do that with the jet sat on top of a screen. So the jet is real and physical, but the game kind of plays out on a little LCD screen that sits underneath it. So yeah, pretty cool. I don't know how long that'll take, but it's my ongoing project at the moment.
So Matt, where can we follow your progress on your new project? Have you got an Instagram account, or what's the best place to find you?
Most of my activity happens on Twitter. My personal one is at Matt Brailsford, so my name, all one word. Or if you're just interested in the making side of things, then I also go by CircuitBeard. So I've got at CircuitBeard as well on Twitter, and that's the same on Instagram. So you can at CircuitBeard on Instagram as well.
Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Jeremy S. Cook. That's my YouTube channel, or on Twitter at Jeremy S. Cook. So simple enough.
Jeremy, what I wanted to ask you is, are you buying any fireworks for 4th of July?
Oh, that's a good point. I actually am making a strand beast, a new strand beast that's going to light off fireworks for the 4th of July. It's going to be amazing.
That's what it was for.
Yeah, so yeah, I've got a 3D printed body for it, and it's got some relays in it that'll hopefully take some nichrome wire and light the fuses and stuff. Should be great. It should look like a tiny little mech warrior thing.
Awesome.
Really looking
hopefully
forward
the
to
strand beast has enough friction so it won't be pushed around by those fireworks.
Yeah.
Well, if it is, it should be a fun video either way. It'll either be the destruction of something by a strand beast or the destruction of a strand beast by fireworks.
Nice.
So either way. So now, what about yourself, Max? Where can we find you?
Well, no fireworks until New Year. My Twitter handle is @max_maker_YT, and you can also check me out on Instagram. That is max_maker_YouTube. And of course, the YouTube channel. Mine and Jeremy's, worth watching. Check them out. And yeah, Matt, thanks for being our guest.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Can't wait to see your latest creation.
Anyway, thanks so much for coming on. It's great to talk to you.
No problem. Good to talk to you as well.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.